When I was very overweight at 300 pounds before, my joints hurt a lot. And I noticed within weeks of starting intermittent fasting, I had a lot of, relief from that. And now when you look at some of the research, you see a lot of the inflammatory signals that are suppressed during fasting are the same signals that are high when we are obese or when we have a lot of fat on us. So intermittent fasting potentially mitigates some of the inflammatory response associated with obesity, which is why, wow, I talk to so many people that are overweight and they feel so good when they fast. Now be careful not to get addicted to it, but let's break down what is happening inside your body because this is fascinating stuff. So a study was published in the journal Cell Metabolism that found that when subjects were doing like 19, 20-hour fasts, they had a significant reduction in what are called circulating monocytes. Now, circulating monocytes are basically like our white blood cells. It's kind of like what we would recognize as our immune system. Now, this is interesting because when you first look at this, why would you want to suppress your immune system? That's not what you want at all. But you have to look at the details of the study because those that had high levels of circulating white blood cells, monocytes to begin with, lots of inflammation, those are the ones that had a positive response from the fasting. Those that had lower levels of inflammation, it didn't suppress it anymore. It only brought monocytes down in those that needed them brought down. Now there's some more interesting detail that we have to look at to understand how this works and how it might actually associate with joint pain and just how we feel overall. Hey, real quick note, after this video, check out Thrive Market. If you're doing fasting, if you're doing keto or anything like that, they are definitely a good one-stop shop for you to get good groceries that are going to fit your lifestyle. It's who I use. I've been using them for a long time. They've been a sponsor on this channel for like 3 or 4 years. So I put a link down below so you can save 25% off of a membership with them, but also get a free gift when you do use that link. So they're an online membership-based grocery store. So that means I don't go to the grocery store. It's at my door in 1 to 3 days, and then I just throw it in my pantry and I'm good to go for the month. So super convenient. But the best thing is a lot of the foods there are ones that have my stamp of approval on them. So if you look at my videos, you watch my videos, and you try to look for advices from me, generally most of the foods that are on Thrive Market within the given categories are ones that I would approve of. That's why they're here and why they're a sponsor on my channel. So check them out down below in the description after this video. So in this study, those that had high levels of monocytes, circulating monocytes, like a high inflammatory response, overactive immune system, what they found is that when they fast, it would reduce what is called CD14 and CD16. CD14 and CD16 bind to very specific receptors that trigger pretty gnarly inflammatory cascades within the body. It just so happens that the CD14 and CD16 are also what are very elevated in people that are obese. So fasting was suppressing the CD14 and CD16 in those individuals. Just so happens that fasting also suppresses CD14 and CD16 in people that are overweight. So we're kind of seeing a correlation here. But what exactly is going on that's triggering more inflammation, and why is fasting getting involved and helping us out with our joints and stuff? Well, the CD14 and CD16 will bind to what are called lipopolysaccharides. Inside of our gut, we have a hermetically sealed area where, of course, there's lots of pathogens, lots of bacteria, lots of things that are not good anywhere else but the gut. What happens is in virtually everybody, we have some leakage that occurs into the bloodstream of things that really shouldn't get into the bloodstream. But the more unhealthy we are and the more overweight we are, the more things leak in. Now, lipopolysaccharides are one of those things. And lipopolysaccharides are notorious for triggering an immune response because the body tries to combat them because they shouldn't be there. They're a pathogen. Well, CD14 and CD16 respond and bind to that lipopolysaccharide and trigger a crazy inflammatory response. And that by far can make us feel inflamed and make our joints hurt and everything like that. So when you're overweight, or when you're obese and you have more CD14 and CD16, you have a heightened response to these LPS, lipopolysaccharides, that are coming in. That is a good reason why you might feel more just stiff and achy and painful, right? Not the only reasons why, but a big reason why. So when you downregulate and you suppress CD14 and CD16 via decreasing circulating monocytes, you have less things to react to the LPS, to the lipopolysaccharides, thereby decreasing the inflammatory response that happens thereafter. So that explains why when we're fasting and we lower circulating monocytes and lower CD14 and CD16, we just feel better. We have less aches and pains. And someone that is overweight or obese, like I was, is going to feel the effect of that significantly more. Someone that is already lean and relatively has like low inflammation, they're probably not going to feel the impact as much because they're already there. But what's interesting is when you look at this research that was in this study, you find that the biggest driver for this is something called AMPK. Okay, so AMPK is the energy switch within our body, right? AMPK recognizes when we are in a deficit. So when we're fasting, AMPK turns on because it's a switch that notifies the body that there's not enough food coming in and then it needs to start using fuel from stored sources like your stored body fat, possibly your muscle, possibly glycogen, liver glycogen, muscle glycogen, etc. So when AMPK goes up, we're not getting food externally, we're getting it from the body. Well, when AMPK is activated, even pharmaceutically, like artificially activated, they noticed there was still the same suppression. Like they still had the same suppression in circulating monocytes in CD14 and CD16. And even more so, fat adaptation, PPAR. So when subjects would fast for extended periods of time or frequently, or when they would do keto and get fat adapted, pharmaceutical activation of PPAR, which is what gets activated when we are fasting or when we do keto for extended periods of time, also lowered circulating monocytes and had that same effect on CD14 and CD16. So we know there that that explains why the more that we fast and the more we make it a habit and a lifestyle, just overall our inflammatory signal with our joints and how we feel ends up just being better. So what is the takeaway from this? Because I know this is informational and probably explains some things, but what's the takeaway? The takeaway is that you do need to work on what you can do to get more fat adapted, because the AMPK response that you get is going to be short term. AMPK is always short term. AMPK is the acute response to not having food. So we know that there's a temporary response when we go into a fast or when we go into a caloric deficit that's going to make our joints feel better and make us have less pain. That's true. Okay, but what about for the longer term? Well, since we know that PPAR is also involved in the same pathway, then we need to work hard to activate PPAR more. So how do we do that? Well, there's certain foods you can have, like ginger can activate PPAR, green tea can activate PPAR, okay? Things like that can activate that whole process. But then the best ways that you can do it is by doing more consistent fasting, getting on a regimen with it, okay? Getting on a schedule and doing longer fasts that allow you to activate PPAR, but do them less frequently. So rather than fasting every day and going through just general caloric restriction, try to do like 2 longer 20-hour fasts per week rather than 4 or 5 16-hour fasts per week. It's going to make a big difference. Additionally, you can try what is called fat fasting, where you take 1 or 2 days now and then, and you literally only have fats. You have things like oils, you have things like, well, pretty much just oils, right? You're just having coconut oil, avocado oil, because you don't want anything else coming in. And what that's going to do is that's going to prime PPAR alpha to get activated more. Now, I'm not a doctor and I'm not trying to like get you out of any like prescriptions or anything like that. That's not my intent at all. I'm just trying to give you pathways that you can use to maybe extend some of the benefits that you're feeling while you are fasting. Fasting is heavily researched, but so is caloric restriction, and they work along the same avenues. We just want to get more fat activation or fat adaptation activation. So as always, please keep it locked in here on my channel, and I'll see you tomorrow.